Denver says its homelessness initiative is finally getting more people into permanent housing than are going back onto the streets. The group, designed to keep an eye on how Denver police are using force, isn't working like it should. The chief says that's because nobody wants the job.
They are not independent. They're not rotating. It's not a variety of opinions.
Yay! Colfax is going to be a mess for years. When it's done, though, there should be a much faster way to get to and from downtown. 104 years on Earth for one of the coolest Coloradans to ever live.
My good news is that I'm seeing so many of my old friends.
Gather round, old friends. It's time for Next. City of Denver has spent tens of millions of dollars moving people off the street and into shelters. And for a while, it really kind of seemed like they were treading water. People just cycled back out onto the streets. But now, the city says more people are moving into permanent housing than they're losing to homelessness. Our Kelly Rinke looks at the numbers.
This may be Denver's best report card on its plan to end homelessness, and city council members this week noticed.
Congratulations on finally flipping the outcomes to the direction we need them to be.
City Councilwoman Amanda Sawyer, one of the program's toughest critics, was happy to see a different trend, considering the city has spent tens of millions of dollars moving people into shelters. For the first time, more people in hotels or tiny homes are moving into permanent housing than leaving shelters and going back onto the streets.
We had also seen an uptick in terms of connection to services from individuals that were in our program, so more people getting access to vital documents, more people getting IDs, more people connecting to the services that were being delivered on site.
Cole Chandler is the senior advisor on homelessness to the mayor. He told council this week they're moving about 5 people indoors every day. 173 people moved into permanent housing over the summer, a nearly 25% increase from the previous quarter.
Some people are moving into permanent supportive housing. They have that attached permanently to supportive services.
The efforts that the city has made to move people from streets to safe spaces and now from those safe spaces into permanent housing is really exactly how the homelessness response system should work.
Colorado Coalition for the Homeless says the way that it is working could be even quicker if more affordable housing options were available.
If we had been making the investments over the last decade in this, high need affordable housing for lower income households, we might not be quite in the crisis that we're in today.
There's no doubt the Mile High City is seeing progress, with fewer tents up on the streets. Unsheltered homelessness in Denver dropped more than 10% in the last year. A point-in-time count that took place in January found 1,200 people were unhoused on that one day. Today, there are more people living in these hotels and permanent housing than people who are outside. Nearly 1,600 people are currently in those spots. I'm always suspicious of judging things based on vibes or feel. But you drive around town and it feels like a different situation than it was years ago. So obviously, city makes an enormous initial investment into setting up these places for people to live temporarily. They can expand that, contract that. They're saying right now they don't have any plans to expand. So they have 1,200 units right now. They're saying they're going to stay with that, and it's because of the one-time federal funding and the city revenues. They're going to work with what they got. Kelly Rinke, thank you. You know what they say, going to get better or going to get worse before it gets better. That's what they say, not what I said, but that's what they say. It's going to be that way for East Colfax for years to come because construction just started on what should be a transformative rapid bus project. A bunch of government muckety-bucks gathered today to break ground on that East Colfax bus rapid transit line. BRT is what you're going to hear a lot. A bus-only lane on Colfax from Civic Center Station downtown out to I-225 in Aurora. Construction on the first mile starts this week. They start in the city center and they go east. Project's going to tear up parts of Colfax and close lanes until 2027. This is obviously going to be disrupted, and there's less than $1 million set aside to help small businesses get through the construction period. There are business leaders and city council members who worry that's not enough.
Your superpower is that you can visit, frequent, and patronize the businesses that are right in the midst of construction and help them with your purchasing power. The businesses will be open on each side of Colfax. You can access them. They want to see you.
Right? We say we want small business in the community. It's just going to be a little bit of a hassle for a while to get to them. Construction is going to happen in installments. Full route will not be complete until 2027 at the earliest. Again, starts on the west end, goes to the east end. Colfax BRT is one of several bus rapid transit lines planned for Denver, including other major projects up and down Colorado and Federal. RTD is still largely silent about the recent firing of that transit agency's police chief, Joel Fitzgerald. I mean, they wouldn't even admit the guy was fired until it showed up on a public record. Well, now RTD has an interim chief, two actually. Two of RTD's deputy chiefs will co-lead the agency's police department for the next several months. RTD says they hope to have a new full-time chief selected by early next year. I mean, pretty sweet gig if you can get it, because in 2022, former Chief Fitzgerald was getting paid more than the police chiefs of Colorado's 3 largest departments. Don't hold your breath for any kind of transparent hiring process from RTD, though. Fitzgerald was terminated for cause, according to a state law enforcement database. RTD has repeatedly refused to provide any information about why he was fired. We only know that his termination was reported to the state last week. Fitzgerald was also previously fired from the Fort Worth Police Department in 2019, but he won a $5.2 million whistleblower settlement from that city. When Denver police found themselves in need of real reform due to public outrage over the death of a teenager many years ago, they decided it might be best to get more input from people who are not cops. Tonight, 9 News investigates why that experiment does not appear to be working. Here's Chris Van.
Where Vine Street meets 37th Avenue, a man with a knife runs toward an officer.
Put it down! Right now!
An officer with a gun. 7 shots wound, but do not kill. This is what it looks like, frame by frame by frame. It takes the Denver DA no more than 30 days to call it a justified split-second judgment. Yet it will take the city's use of force board 20 times more than that to determine the officer violated no policies.
This seems messy.
Yes, that's a small picture of a much messier picture also.
As head of the city's Citizen Oversight Board, it's Julia Richmond's job to help the city police the police. She says that job is hampered by a system that's both lengthy and opaque.
What I will say is those processes aren't transparent at all.
When a Denver police officer shot and killed a teen named Paul Childs in 2003, the city pledged to reform its administrative reviews of officer shootings. Central to the reforms, a use of force board filled with not just police officers, but 2 impartial community members who would be rotated through. 2 decades later, Richmond says the experiment has a flaw.
But they are not independent. They're not rotating. It's not a variety of opinions, right? It's the same folks over and over, and the decisions are always the same as a result.
The board meets in private. The citizens are appointed by the police chief, and while one of the 2 citizens started serving early last year, the other started long ago.
There is a community member who served for more than 10 years on that board. What I understand is that person hardly ever says, this is out of policy.
And not even Richmond knows who that person is.
And I've never met that person. I don't know their name, or those people, I don't know their names.
And so she wasn't shocked by our investigation, which found since 2018, only twice has the use of force board concluded a shooting violated even a smidge of police policy.
In our 22 annual report, we had said, this is problematic. We don't have actual representation here. These folks have been working with police officers for a decade. They're not exactly a neutral community representative.
I would certainly be open to doing things differently than we have historically done them.
Denver's police chief says the system isn't perfect, but he insists it's not deeply flawed.
While certainly the meetings are held behind closed doors, I think our results are transparent, and there is no attempt to influence the civilian members that serve on this board.
He'd like to see more civilians rotated through, but admits interest hasn't exactly been robust.
With all due respect, it doesn't seem like there's any interest, almost.
That's fair to say. That's fair to say. And again, I can only imagine that it's because it's an awful lot of work.
It's a huge amount of work to review an officer-involved shooting.
Adding to the problem, when it comes to pay, citizen board members receive zilch.
And so we suggested, you really ought to find a new way of doing this, improve the transparency, find a different selection approach for that.
Put it down! Put it down!
And time is clearly a problem too, considering it can take years for the private, not public board to find no policy violations. Even this straightforward case in 2020 at Vine and 37th didn't get its final review from the use of force board until 635 days after the shooting.
But I do think that this is something that we're going to get fixed. I do think that we are going to get some individuals that that believe this is important work.
Somebody sees this story and is interested in it, what should they do?
They should reach out, so that we can start that process to see if they can join us in this effort.
Chris Vanderveen, 9 News.
We are 225 weeks into your Word of Thanks microgiving. We have never had a project with a name as good as Butt Savers. The nonprofit Salute Family Health saw too many of its patients unable to afford life-saving colonoscopies. And these were docs who knew that the difference between an early screening and diagnosis and a late diagnosis is often the difference between life and death when we talk about colorectal cancer. So that nonprofit staff started pooling their own money to reduce the cost of colonoscopies for patients in need. Because Salute staff would see patients come in with symptoms. I mean, these are people who needed screening soon, and then those patients would often disappear for months while they saved up the money for the procedure. So that's why they started Butt Savers, to reduce the out-of-pocket costs for the patients they serve from there in Commerce City up to Longmont, Weld County, out to the Eastern Plains. They've got a huge coverage area of low-income Coloradans. The doctors say that 1 in 60 of those screenings saves a life. So I'd like to think that if we pooled our funds together, we might be able to say that we saved a life or two. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word thanks to 303-871-1491 to get that link to join me in donating. More than 3,000 of you have signed up to simplify your giving with a monthly donation to the Word of Thanks Fund. You put in your info once, we divide it automatically amongst the nonprofits we feature. That's meant $23,000 per week in donations lately. Use the same QR code or text to get there. Denver strip clubs are refusing to comply with a wage theft investigation. They say the city should give dancers some privacy. And nothing says good news like a birthday. And this jazz legend has seen 104 of them. An owner of some strip clubs in Denver is suing to stop a wage theft investigation by the city and the $1,000 a day fines that come with it. Not because they don't have the cash on hand. Presumably, the owners of PT Show Club, Diamond Cabaret, and PT Centerfold could bring in a wheelbarrow full of singles every day to pay the fine. But they say the investigation is an invasion of their dancers' privacy. Our partners at Business Den were the first to report on this lawsuit against Denver's Division of Labor this week. Denver Labor ordered the club owner, RCI Holdings, to turn over contracts, payment records, and other info last month as part of this investigation as to whether the clubs are misclassifying their dancers to deny them benefits. Clubs were threatened with daily fines up to $1,000 if they didn't cooperate. Well, clubs don't want to cooperate. They're not about to make it rain on the city auditor either. RCI's lawsuit says turning over the documents would breach privacy agreements with the dancers and said the city is being paternalistic. Vail's battle of the little bighorn sheep is finally over. New deal resolves the town's decade-long debate over building new workforce housing versus protecting a bighorn sheep habitat. Vail Resorts is dropping its bid to develop 23 acres in East Vail to turn into housing for lower wage workers like lift operators at the resort. The town seized the land through eminent domain last year, said the bighorn sheep habitat on the land should be preserved. Resorts have been appealing that decision in court, arguing that this is all just a ruse to keep affordable housing out of Vail. This week, Town Council approved a new deal with the resort owners. Vail Resorts drops their appeal, instead will develop land on the other side of town, and in return, the town says it will prioritize that new development. Strippers, sheep, Lauren Robinson, we've got it all around here. You've got the weather.
Yeah, well, none of my stories are as interesting as those two stories, guys. I'm sorry. We just have some heat, some increased fire danger as we go through the next couple of days. 81 degrees right now at DIA. Winds coming in from the southeast at around 15 miles per hour. Now, as we take a look at our fire weather alerts, we will be seeing widespread red flag warnings across most of Colorado as we go throughout our Saturday. And that's because we're going to be very warm, very dry, very breezy as we make our way through Saturday. So that's going to increase those fire concerns. Outside of that, clear skies tonight. We stay sunny throughout the day tomorrow. Overnight lows will be in the 40s and 50s across most of the state with 30s up in the high country. Tomorrow, we're looking for those highs near 87 degrees, which will likely break a record high of 86 degrees. We're also going to look for that fire danger. We're also going to look for those winds to gust up to around 10 to 25 miles per hour across Denver. Winds gusting up to around 50 miles per hour in the foothills and high country. Forecast highs for the rest of the front range tomorrow. tomorrow afternoon, middle to upper 80s with some 90s to the east, 60s and 70s in the foothills and high country. We're going to stay pretty warm as we make our way throughout Saturday. A weak cool front drops our temperatures Sunday, but as we go into next week, more sunny, warm temperatures ahead.
My good news is that we have a new grandbaby coming in a few weeks.
Not mine.
I can't sort that out for you, but that's good news for somebody. Coloradans answer our favorite Friday question next. For the past 401 Fridays in a row, can you believe they've left the show on the air that long? We have been ending each week sharing your good news. And this week was pretty obvious. Local celebrity on the music scene celebrating a triple-digit birthday. Jazz icon Charles Burrell turns 104 today, celebrating with friends young, old, and really old.
My good news for the day is that we are celebrating Charlie Burrell's 104th birthday at Dazzle. I can't imagine being 104. It's so amazing the things you must have seen and the changes in the world and the people around you.
My good news is that Charlie Burrell made it to 104 and is still doing great.
You know, it's uplifting. It's amazing. Somebody to have a career like that and to have this many people that are here. Because typically when you're that old, all your friends have died like 25 years ago.
My good news is that wonderful man whom I met 75 years ago, my first cousin, is alive and well today on his 104th birthday.
My good news is that we have a new grandbaby coming in a few weeks.
Not mine.
Not ours.
My good news is the life of Charles Burrell, and we are here celebrating.
My good news is that I'm seeing so many of my old friends. I can't not believe it. All I do now is just follow the parade.
He's lived to see a century of change. God bless him. That's my good news today.
Oh, I love it. Love it. The most Colorado thing we saw today, a group of people expanding the definition of who is at home in our state. It was great to be back with the Spring Institute and its supporters today. That nonprofit helps immigrant and refugee communities put their skills and talents to use to benefit our whole community, like helping foreign trained professionals get U.S. licenses so that they can then fill gaps in our workforce. That is a most Colorado thing indeed. Wasn't Charlie Burrell like the most fashionable 104-year-old man? He really was. Thank you. Back with your feedback next. Hey, if you don't have plans next Tuesday, we're hosting a debate in Colorado's closest congressional race. Tuesday, 6 p.m. in place of Next. It is Next Presents, the race for Congress. Debate between Democratic Congresswoman Yadira Caraveo and Republican challenger Gabe Evans. Only live debate in that race. I will moderate alongside Marshall Zellinger. You can watch on 9 News and streaming on 9 News Plus. Feedback tonight from Jill and Leroy, who say, we never missed listening to your show. Appreciate that. We're wondering why Tina Peters' sentencing yesterday has not been reported on the nightly news, like on NBC News. They said, we feel it is huge news, and that's extremely curious. That's an interesting question. I was also kind of surprised that it didn't get more national notice. Here's my best guess. I think that the national news networks are dealing with a fire hose of election-related news that they're covering every night, especially from the swing states. So that's going to take precedence over maybe a story that has more localized interest. Although I think with the size of her sentence, it could have been national news. At the end of the day, I don't tell Lester what to put in his show. Lester doesn't tell me what to put in my show. It works well that way. See you next time.